Everyone, welcome to this week's Facebook Live for Fire Drill Podcast. I am very excited to be here today. And as you might notice, I have this fancy new mic here that's looking pretty good. Finally managed to acquire all the pieces needed to set it up and finally managed to also troubleshoot it and figure out how to connect it to my computer. So I am very, 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 very happy that I get to look and sound good for these Fire Drill Live showings. First piece of business, first item on the to-do list today. Thank you so much for voting for us for the Plutus Awards. We got 3 nominations. Three nominations for a Plutus Award, and we are ecstatic. We could not be happier. So we just wanted to say thank you from the bottom of our hearts, because it means a lot that our community supports us and wants us to see us succeed and would want to vote for us and see us win one of these awards. Fire Drill was nominated for Best New Podcast last year, and we're actually doing that led to a speaking gig at FinCon this year, where we are doing a panel on what we've learned in the year since we got nominated for Best New Podcast with the other people who are also nominated for Best New Podcasters. So this leads to a lot of really good stuff, and we're really excited. Both Jay and I got nominated for solo Plutus Awards as well, for Best Fire Blog / Podcast, I believe. So yeah, we are going head to head for an award. So may the best millennial blog, it's the millennial blog one. May the best millennial blogger win. Just kidding. I hope we both do well. But we're both super psyched to be nominated. So we just wanted to say thanks. And let's see what else. Oh, yeah. This last week, I finally got rid of the Jingle House. I am completely done. 100%. This thing is no longer on my plate. And I am thrilled. I don't know if you can tell, but my shoulders are sitting higher because I don't have an 800-pound gorilla hanging over my back anymore, which is just fabulous. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. I am so ecstatic. I got a lot of money from it, too. I couldn't believe it that they gave me almost $12,000 for selling my property. Plus, weirdly enough, I called the utility company, and I was expecting to pay a bill because they've been hounding me for the last month and a half or so. I am not going to miss the Jingle House. Thank you very much. Not going to miss it. So I called the utility company and said, hey, I have a bill to pay. I'm no longer on this property. And they said, yeah, you've been taken out, but we have a credit on your account. And I said, what? And they said, yeah, you had budget billing and you had a credit left over. So where do you want the check sent to? And I was like, is this reverse billing? What's going on here? I'm getting money from the utility company. This has never happened before, and it was amazing. So I got $300 back from the utility company, which was awesome. And then I called USAA, my insurance company, and said, hey, I need to cancel the rental policy. And they said, no problems. Where would you like that $900 credit to go to? And I was like, wait, $900? What? So yesterday I made $1,200 just by canceling all of the things associated with the Jingle House, which is the really good maraschino cherry on top of an awesome whipped cream on top of an awesome sundae with chocolate sauce and bananas. Sorry, am I making people hungry? I'm sorry. But yeah, I am super stoked that is all done and off of my plate. So today we are talking to the one and the only Chelsea Brennan. And I am very excited because she was already on the podcast and she rocked it. So we decided to have her on again on the Facebook Live. So you do follow-up questions with her and tell her how awesome she was on the podcast and how much you loved it. So without further ado, I'm going to bring her onto the show. And so she's going to pop in right now. Hey, Chelsea, how's it going?
Hey, good. How are you?
I'm doing well. So I'm excited to have you back. So welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So we got a lot of feedback from our listeners the first time around when you had on that they really enjoyed seeing the perspective of somebody who made it all work because you had the career, but you also didn't sacrifice your family either. You have an awesome family. So you got a lot of kudos and pats on the back for that. And a lot of people were like, "Oh, that's like really inspiring that like it's actually possible to do everything." So,
Yeah, it doing everything is I don't know if I would classify it that way. It was a lot at the time. It's still a lot, but I appreciate the thought process for sure. Uh, we actually moved. My son is currently his crib is in my office most of the time now because he is sleep training, which is like a whole other thing. You don't have kids yet. It's really super fun. But we moved him out back into our room tonight so I could do this live. So he wasn't just crying in the office.
oh
Uh,
no. Okay, so for those of us who potentially will be parents in the future, what is sleep training? I know vaguely what it is, but like talk to me about it.
so currently needed to be like rocked to sleep every night and put down, and like you're just like when you're letting them learn how to fall asleep on their own, and like there's various opinions about like whether this is a good thing or not.
You're abandoning your
um,
child. You're causing them distress and trauma.
Oh yes, I've heard all this, and I definitely went through all that stuff with my first kid. I'm like, oh, he can't cry, and then it was like I gave up. I was like, you know what, he can cry, he's fine. And then after 2 days, he was he sleeps 12 hours every night since then, so I'm fine with 2 days of crying.
Dylan says he hears you on the sleep training, and he says that sleep training is when every person in the house cries every night.
That's about right. That's about right. My when we sleep trained my neighbor like brought me drinks every night, and like she dropped coffees and teas off at my house. I'm like, good luck.
I was thinking something more along the lines of like, wine or strong whiskey if you weren't breastfeeding. But, tea works as well, I guess.
I don't drink alcohol, but she offered all those things.
In that case, a nice soothing chamomile tea is lovely to have.
Perfect, perfect.
Yeah, I think I don't remember my sister ever talking about sleep training, but my niece and nephew, my nibblings are pretty good at falling asleep pretty much wherever, whenever. Although I will share a funny anecdote. My sister took my niece, and she was, I don't know, like 18 or so months old, took her to my aunt and uncle's house, and was just like the perfect baby all day, was being passed around from person to person, was just a happy, bubbly baby. It was playing all the time, and then my cousin was pregnant with her first, and she was like, "Man, you make working kids have easy. Like, it's not this easy, right?" She's like, "Well, let's see." So then that night, Olivia turned into like the screaming devil monster from hell and kept everybody in the house up. And she was like, "Aha! It was an act. I knew it."
My kids are awesome at showing off when there's like other people around. It's very impressive of anyone's there, they don't cry. And then as soon as they're gone, it's meltdown time.
So you started your career before you had kids.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So talk to me like, how did that? I know we covered that a little bit on the podcast, but like, how did that factor in? Talk me through that a little bit. Having
Yeah,
kids factor into your
so
career.
I got married relatively young. I was 23 at the time, and my husband's 6 years older than me. So we wanted kids. I was going to be a little young, and I was nervous about it. And I had this managing director at Goldman who was a huge mentor to me. He was awesome. And I went to him at one point. I was like, "How do I think about like promotion timing and like when I want to have kids?" And his response was, in a 30-year career, it's a blip. Now I'm recognizing that as a man, he was not fully understanding what the hit on the career would be. But his point was valid of like, we get so caught up in the impact it has on that single year, but over a stretch of time, like you can outrun it, and especially in a finance career where there are places you're still going to get your annual bonus. It usually doesn't take a huge salary hit to take that break. So I ended up changing from Goldman to the hedge fund in Boston. And one of our things was I wanted to get promoted to VP before we had kids. So as soon as I was kind of clear that I was on that trajectory and I knew when I would be promoted or when about I would be promoted, then we were comfortable starting our family. But we knew my husband was going to stay home, so I wanted that like additional security if possible.
That's totally fair. So, so you're working for a little while. There's an overlap between having kids and quitting work. So Mel would like to know, as a mom of 2 toddlers, 3 and 2, bless your heart, Mel, I really admire all that you've created and the schedule you set yourself. How have you been dealing with keeping to your schedule with so much going on?
Yeah, so when I was when I had my son and I was still at the hedge fund, it was really hard. And to be completely honest, like I had really bad postpartum depression after my first was born. And that made keeping a schedule hard. And actually when I started the blog was when I started to work out of that, and like having a very full, very rigid schedule actually helped me. It helps my personality just like cope. So I I can't have free time. It's like just not good for my head. So I got up in the morning, I fed my son his first bottle, I went to work, I came home, I put him to bed. I had like 15 minutes to put him to bed before his bedtime. And then I worked on the blog until bed. And that's kind of how it worked for the first year of the blog until I left right before my second child was born. And now that I'm home, we're still optimizing it a little bit. I mean, I try to set, my schedule, but kids, they interrupt all that stuff. So it's like, I say like, okay, I'm going to try to work for 4 hours in the morning. and if it's not going to work, then I'll do it after bed. Like I'm trying to be a little more flexible. But I started using Asana recently so I can track like everything that needs to be done. And that's been huge, of just like knowing what needs to be done, but being flexible about when it gets done during the day, because they need us at different times sometimes.
Okay, so there's a lot to go into. First off, okay, so did you read Mrs. Frugalwood's post about her postpartum depression?
Yeah, I actually traded some emails with Liz after that.
And I was just like blown away, like, wow, to have it described so vividly from somebody who hasn't experienced childbirth was just like eye-opening to, like, these are some of the things that it can look like, like, even if you don't think you're depressed, this is what it looks like you are. And so I found that to be really insightful.
Yeah, so it's fascinating. So I only realized I had postpartum depression after my first, after the fact, like way beyond. But I was like, oh, that was not normal, and that was not okay. And even now, I have it a little bit with my second right now as well, and it's hard to recognize sometimes because kids change so much that sometimes you just assume like, well, this is what it's like to have little kids. And you need someone like a doctor or a spouse to be like, maybe this just isn't quite normal. And it's hard to listen to, but yeah, her post was fantastic, and she's such an amazing writer anyway, but like such a good post, and so good for other moms to see that like this happens and it's okay.
So, if I may ask, how is that different with your second? Like, were you aware of that with your second? Did you mitigate that at all? Or did you just kind of let it play out like you did the first one?
So we were more aware of it. We still weren't quite sure what to do about it. And we kind of thought that if we just watched it, we could keep more control on it. And I'm just starting medication for it now. I decided I would give it 7 months, like I'd give it 6 or 7 months and see if it just went away. And then if it didn't, like I'd start to mitigate it. So we're starting to work on that now, but we definitely watched it closer with the second once we knew that it had happened, because it is more likely to happen again if it's happened before.
Right.
So.
All right. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate it. Yeah, let's see here. I think so Dylan says, having young kids make you nimble in how you work. Once my son was sick, he wasn't sleeping and finally fell asleep in the car. So he parked at Starbucks and was close enough to get Wi-Fi in his laptop and worked in the car.
Oh yeah, we've done that for sure. Well, not from Starbucks, but even just like parking in the driveway, because my kids like love to sleep in the car. Just like park in the driveway and work.
Yeah. So then, what was the other thing that I was going to ask you about what you said? Oh, I think it's really insightful. And you're like, it doesn't matter when it gets done during the day, just as long as like it gets done at some point. I think that flexibility is huge, not just with like having kids, but like getting work in general done.
I agree, and I think it's also really important to know when you work best. So like I work really well from 5 o'clock in the morning till like 11 o'clock in the morning,
Mhm.
and then if I have to work from like 8 to 10, it just takes me forever. So like sometimes I'll sacrifice those morning hours if they really need to be, but I know that I'm like doubling the amount of time it's going to take me to get anything done. So trying to protect your golden hours too, I think is hard, but
Yeah, I'm also a morning person. So like after lunch, I don't know if it's just like the food or just like I've been up for a couple hours, but it like everything slows down. It's like, oh, okay, well, I need a nap, and my brain is just not connecting the dots at all. It's just like not working.
I was always a morning person. And I think banking trains you to be a morning person as well because like you're up before the markets and you're dealing with the traders, and then it kind of slows off by the end of the day. And then we'd all stay till 10 o'clock at night, but only because like that's what you're supposed to do, and you were mostly hanging out with people. But yeah, I was like most productive in the morning for sure.
Yeah, I always came into work early because I like coming into work early and I got to leave early. So, I'd get to work at like by 7 and then I could leave at like 3, which was awesome.
That
Um,
sounds awesome. It is not something I've ever experienced.
Clearly I was not in the banking world. Um, Although I did work for the finance wing of my company for a little while there. And yeah, it wasn't too much different. I still left early. But that was more from like, I'm tired of sitting here bored at my desk. I don't have anything to do. I'm leaving.
It got
So
harder at Goldman. So Goldman's an open floor plan. I don't know if anyone cares about this. I can't see the comments. It's like the weirdest thing to me about Be Live is it's like I can't see, which I didn't know by the way because I've only ever hosted through Be Live. So this is like explaining so
Uh,
much about my having guests on.
okay, so
But
quick point. My thing with Be Live is that the comments from Facebook are slightly delayed. So like we'll move on to a different topic and then we'll get tons of comments on what we just talked about after I've already moved on. So then I go back, so it like kind of bounces back and forth. So I'm sorry. That's why I'm doing that. Just so you
no,
know.
it's fine. I get
Well,
that.
more to the people watching than you, because you get it, but they might not know why we bounce back and forth so much. Anyway,
Gotcha. No, but so Goldman was an open floor plan. So we'd be there late and it was okay because you like my best friend is like my son's godmother sat near me and like it was totally great to be there. And then when I moved to the hedge fund, we all had our own offices, which like sounds great, except it's super isolating. By the end of 12 hours, you're like, okay, I really need to talk to somebody, not through IM.
face to face interaction. I crave you. Come here. Talk to me. That's when
Exactly.
you like talk the guy off the ear off the guy who's like serving you your sandwich for dinner, and you're like, I'm so sorry, I just haven't had any really interaction today. Been there, done that, especially now that I work from home. Okay, so bouncing back to that. So I look at the Facebook comments through the actual Facebook post because Facebook doesn't show me who wrote that comment. It just shows me Facebook user. So that's why I switch back and forth. So Dylan said, "Thank you for sharing your story of postpartum." And then Kevin said that it is really tough and not discussed enough, and that his wife takes car rides just to trigger or nap for their kids. So apparently, you are not alone.
Yeah, and the nap thing I think is just all car seats are like kryptonite for kids. I don't know what it is, but
Oh yeah, they're like bouncing off the wall, and then you put them in the car seat, and zonked. Just done. Also, can we just talk about car seats for a second? Why are they so complicated to set up?
to get them in the car or to get them buckled in because my mom can't figure out how to buckle the kids in no matter how many
Both,
times I try her.
both. Because I had to install the car seat when I watched my niece for a weekend. I had to install the car seat in my car. And that was a pain in the ass because you have to like dig in the seats to find the anchor thing to hook it
Yep.
into. And that's gross because God only knows what's in your back seats, especially after kids, with like Cheerio crumbs and whatever. So you're like digging around there, it's all gross and crunchy and crinkly, and you like finally find it, and you're like have to like it's an act of God, and your entire car is rocking back and forth as you're like trying to pull it in there. Yeah.
This is going to be a total like feminist fail. My husband does that every time. I'm just like, I don't want to do it. You put it in the car. I'm not doing it.
So then
I think he needed me once because he had to like lean on it and he couldn't get in between the car seat but yeah, no, he does it.
So then once the car seat's installed, you have to figure out like how to hook it all together. And there's like a hook that comes from the top, and then there's like two prongs that like interlock together that have to go into the thing. And so then you're like, how do I like, and then you're trying to fumble with the two pieces to get them to stay enough together to form the lock to get it in there. And the kid's wiggling around. And it's like, doesn't want to be doing that. It's like, why do we have to wear this?
At least my 2.5-year-old is now old enough to explain to his grandparents how to put he and his brother. No, Papa, do that one first, and then.
Oh, that's amazing. So yeah, my sister's having a rough day, and so she's like, "Can you put Olivia in her car seat?" And I was like, "Sure." So I get her in the car seat, and I'm like, "This is not working. I don't know how to do it." They had just switched to a different one, and I'd never seen that one before. And so she's like, "Can't you just put?" I was like, "No, I physically cannot do this." And she had to like get out of the driver's seat and like put everything together. And was like super mad at me that I didn't know how to work her daughter's car seat. And I was like, "I'm sorry, I don't deal with it every day." I don't have car seats in the back. I get how to do it, but it's not, car seats are
This
awful.
is the least finance focused Facebook Live we could have come up with, but
It's okay. But you know what? Personal finance is personal, and car seats cost less of money. So there you go. There's the link.
There we go. We got it. We're connected.
All right. Well, back to the finance part of that then, since we feel obligated to talk about financy stuff on our finance podcast live. Mel asked for some top tips for working mamas who have side hustles. What's your top tips?
Ooh, focus on what actually matters for your side hustle. A lot of us waste way too much time on like these like weird little things, like bloggers focusing on Twitter, going and playing around on Facebook and blogging, like commenting on other people's blogs. It's all great if you have all the time in the world, but focus on what needs to get done, and then like cram it into nap time, cram it into like that first hour after the kids go to bed, like do it then. Is my biggest piece of advice. Like just really triage things because you're not going to be able to do everything that you want to do. And then my other big piece of advice, if you have young kids, is to pick a side hustle you actually enjoy. So I get emails all the time from moms that are like, I heard you can make a lot of money doing this, but I'm miserable and I'm not making any money. I'm like, well, you're already busy enough with like, especially if you're either stay-at-home mom or you work, like you're just busy enough with little kids. Like pick something you actually like because, yes, the hourly rate might be a little lower if you're running an Etsy shop, but like do something you actually like doing.
Do you want to know a secret?
Sure.
I am not a big fan of running Etsy. Yeah, that's a secret, everybody. You heard it here. I don't mind doing it, but it's not something I enjoy. And it's one of those things where you can't just like 80-20 it, right? Like it has to be really good if you want to like stand out and make lots of money on it. And I just can never quite get to that level of like, wow, this looks really awesome. It's very frustrating for me to work on.
So question, why Etsy instead of Shopify? You have a blog.
I do, yeah. Mostly because I didn't really want it to be associated with the blog, because they're two completely separate things. Like Shopify would be great for the integration if I was like a stained glass blog.
Yeah.
I wanted to sell my own stuff, but since it's like completely separate, then I was like, nah, Etsy is the way to go.
I hadn't been on your Etsy shop. I didn't know it was in there.
Yeah. So I sell lots of random things in a vain attempt to earn money. So I started off with stained glass patterns, but it turns out there aren't very many stained glass artists who are looking for patterns, and they're not on Etsy. So I've had one sale since I started in like, I don't know, when was that, March, April, sometime around there, February. Anyway, it was a long time. But Kevin,
my mom does stained glass, but she does like one every 5 years. So she's not going to be a high volume.
Yeah, exactly. And it takes a long time. And, there's complicated projects and everything. So, yeah, that's why.
All right.
Okay, so let's see here. So Dylan asks if you have anything that you would tell new bloggers to focus on: content, getting readers, outreach. What's the most important thing to focus on.
Content. So
Content is king.
consistent, great content. Make sure you're getting, like, if you post at least once a week. I know not everyone can post like 2 or 3 times a week. Don't get bogged down in like, oh, we're supposed to post 3 times a week, so I'm just gonna put out whatever I can get written. Like, make sure it's good.
Oh my gosh. My first year, I wrote a post on Earth Day. Yeah.
Yeah, I tried to I did actually write a post every day for the first month of the blog. And I think I deleted like 10 of those posts 6 months ago. So I was like, this is awful and it cannot exist on the internet.
Yep, pretty much.
So focus on good content and then outreach. I think like social media is great, getting out in the blogger community is great, but like building, it's just the best way to get an audience is to get in front of other people's audiences that have overlap of like who you want to talk to. I think that was huge for me in my first 6 months, was like really doing a lot of guest posting. I would focus on that.
Awesome. Okay. I would agree with that, by the way. So Mel asks if you're still freelancing for certain clients, or have you completely cut out freelancing at this point?
I have 3 freelancing clients right now, down from 8 at my peak. And I'm whittling it down. My husband's challenge is that I be completely done by January. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, if there's anything that I can write about, you're more than welcome to pass them along to me.
Okay.
I'll help you out because I'm a good friend.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have you trimmed down your freelance clients because of the work that you're doing with the blog and the products you're creating, like your emergency binder?
Yeah, so the emergency binder launch went luckily like way better than I expected it to. So that was a big catalyst of like, okay, I can actually make money on the blog, so I should focus on that. But it's also just a big factor of, we did this whole mini retirement break, whatever you want to call it, with the intention of building the blog. So I didn't want to get to the end of this 2 years and be like, I didn't commit time to building the blog. So it's a mix of things. I have the emergency binder that I'm still doing work on, and then I'm going to launch a Shopify shop in November with more stuff like that. So I'm doing a lot of work on that, but I've been scaling back more to just get focused on the blog, at least for sole focus for 2019.
And if you're curious as to what we're talking about, you can check out Fire Drill resources page, and it's listed at the bottom or towards the bottom, I think. So you can go check it out, and I would recommend it because, okay, so you should probably explain what it is.
All right, I'll give you the pitch. So,
hit me.
So here we go. I've talked about this thing so much that it's just totally crazy. Or you could go to my, yeah, it's all over the place. But the point of the emergency binder is allowing somebody else to pick up the pieces in the business of your life if you weren't around. If you had a medical emergency, if you were delayed with travel and someone else was watching your kids, if you passed away unexpectedly. A lot of people, especially when it comes to estate planning, think that a will and a life insurance policy is enough, like that's what you're supposed to have. But the reality of being a conservator of estate, of picking up the pieces, is that you need all this information and all these account numbers and all this instruction that most people don't leave behind. Even people who develop really great wills don't have. And it can cause hours and hours of work and stress for your family members or for your kids if you're older. So the emergency binder pulls all that information that someone would need together. So it has 2 parts. The basic information is like stuff that I actually reference all the time. So like our bills, medical power of attorney for the kids. So like that's one thing that people forget a lot, is that you leave your kids with their grandparents for the weekend and they get an ear infection. Grandma can't go get them medication because she's not their guardian, or if they break their arm. So you either have to come home or have a doctor that like kind of bends the rules and lets you call it in. But like you technically need this form. So that's all kept in the front part of the binder. And then there's the need to know stuff, which is really just like in case of death or really major emergency. That's like, so for me, I manage all our investments, which is, I know, is a huge shocker. But my husband, like, we have a life insurance policy, but he would have no idea what to do. Like, sequence of return risks and with like where he should withdraw and where he should invest the insurance money, he would have no idea. So like that part of the binder walks you through spelling that out for your next of kin. Like obviously it's not binding, but it gives them some guidance, especially if you have one spouse that is less involved. Like here's the bills I pay every month, and here's where it comes from, and here's how to deal with things. So it ends up being, it's a PDF fillable document. You can update it as needed, or I recommend putting in an alert like once a year. But it just puts everything in one place, and that's the purpose. And that was not a short pitch. I really got to work on that like shorter version of the pitch.
Yeah, come on, like people are falling asleep. No, I'm just kidding. No, it was great. I loved it. I think that's incredibly useful, especially as I've had friends who have had their spouses pass away, leaving them in the lurch, because especially if they haven't fully combined finances, like how do you pay your car loan, or how do you call and figure out where their student loans are at, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. So definitely, I think that's necessary.
It's really important for kids too. Both my parents lost a parent when they were young. My dad was 12 and my mom was 13. And she was saying that like, so we have a page in there that's just childcare information of like, hey, this is my kid's favorite book before he goes to sleep, and this is his best friend's mom's phone number, and like all that kind of stuff. And she was like, when her father died, her best friend came and someone called her best friend, and her best friend's parents came and picked her up, and she stayed there for a couple of days while her mom was dealing with things. And she was like, if no one knew how to contact the right people, it's just huge to have that like comfort and stability for your kids if anything was to ever happen.
Yeah, definitely. That reminds me of that one Katherine Heigl movie. It's like Life Happens or something like that. It was about the two people get named co-guardian of their daughter after they pass away in a car accident.
Oh, yeah,
they have to move into their friend's house and raise their daughter. And it's a rom-com, so they fall in love. Blah blah blah. Spoiler, sorry. Super great movie, but totally.
I was gonna go watch it right now, but no, I don't need to.
Yeah, now that I just ruined the end completely. So, would the ICE binder be useful for an older parent living alone as well?
Absolutely. So, older parents. So, my mom is not old. My mom is 55. She would be mad if I brought her up in this conversation, but she does have one. And then my in-laws have one as well. I talk a lot about like, especially if you're a single individual, it's actually more important. Now there's pages of the binder that you're going to ignore, right? Like the childcare section, just like throw that out. But the rest of it is important because no one knows where your stuff is. Like if you're married, at least like there's like a general idea of like, hey, this is Chelsea's computer and like this is where she generally keeps things. Right. But if there's not someone watching your day to day, the binder becomes even more important. So I've had a lot of people email me saying they're buying them for their parents, and it makes it easy for them to not feel like they're completely overwhelmed. And one other thing I'll mention that I had someone on talking about their experience losing a family member when we were doing the launch, and she was telling me that she finally brought it up to her mother. Of like her mother's 78, and she was worried about it, and she finally brought it up, and her mom was so relieved because she'd been trying to figure out how to talk about this for like years, and she couldn't do it. So it's an awkward conversation, but like it's hard in having the conversation, and it's just a great peace of mind once you just get through having the conversation. So
okay, so wait, your mom's only 55?
My mom is only 55.
How old are you?
28.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so you're 1 year older. You're 1 year older than me, and my mom is 66 this year.
Yeah, my mom is young and like super high energy and crazy. She's way more energy than me.
Yeah, my dad turned 70 this year. That's crazy. It's crazy to think that I have old parents like that. But I have no idea what my parents' finances look like. Step parents, moms. I have no idea. I've asked them about finances in the past, but again, super duper awkward. And my stepdad's notoriously private with finances anyway. So he was like, yeah, we're fine. We're taken care of. Like, you don't have to worry about us. And I was like, okay, but like, I'm going to anyway. So can we just like be really sure that you're fine? But like 1 year he told us that they had spent $20,000 on medical expenses. And it was like, what? That's crazy. And we didn't even like, oh yeah, by the way, we're spending a lot of money in hospitals this year. Like, Yeah.
So this is very funny. So my in-laws have mostly combined finances, except my mother-in-law has these accounts that are just her accounts. So my father-in-law pays all the bills and manages all their retirement spending, but doesn't know how much money are in these accounts that my mother-in-law has, or like how to access them. It makes him very, very frustrated. So very, very, very private people. I'm the only one who knows like how much is in all the accounts because they both come to me for advice all the time. So I have this like haven of information. And then my mother, my parents got divorced several years ago, 6 years ago now. And that process is when I started to really understand what was going on with her financial situation, because she, at the time I was working, keep in mind I'm like working at Goldman. She hired a financial advisor without talking to me. She was like, I met this guy and he was very trustworthy. Like, no.
Mom, no. Stop.
So we pulled her out of that. We kind of like unraveled that situation. So I have some idea, but even her, like we're working on getting her a will and like making sure that that's all in place because my husband and I are both older siblings, so we will be conservators of both parents' estates. So we have we want to make sure we're on top of that for sure.
Yeah, I'm the youngest, so hopefully I won't have to deal with any of that, and I let my two older sisters deal with all that stuff.
My best friend, who was, I said, worked with me at Goldman, was in Vermont with us last week, which is awesome. They're from California, so they came and spent a week with us. Mm-hmm. And her grandparents, who are 97, just moved into like a home, like a
assisted living facility.
They were assisted living. There we go. They're still like they were still like driving and stuff, so they're completely crazy. But her parents were going through the process of moving their stuff out of their house after 30 years. And her father had dinner with her younger brother and was like, you're going to have to do this for us some point. And he was like, no, Danielle will do that. I don't, and like completely deadpan, just like, no, I won't have to do that. And that would be my younger brother, and my sister-in-law would also be like, not my fault, not my problem.
Yeah, long story short, my paternal side of the family is a little crazy. Grandma was like a black widow, unintentionally, but died with several $1,000,000 in the bank from her former husbands who had passed away and left her lots of money. And just nice old guys who were watching after her, right? And then she just took all their money and left his kids really mad. But my aunt and dad got the estate when she passed away, and a good chunk of it was set aside for my dad's care because he has MS and lives in a facility. He's no longer capable of taking care of himself. And the understanding is that whatever was left over in the trust after he was gone was be passed down to us kids and split between our kids. That was our inheritance. Well, like a year ago, we got this like long, rambling, confusing email from my aunt that we're like, Mom, can you like translate this? We don't understand what it means. And she's like, long story short, your aunt blew all the money in the trust and now wants you kids to pay for his care. And we're like, oh, great. Okay, not doing that. That's fine. That's great. So
that's crazy.
Yeah.
So was she the financial manager of the estate?
Miss Manager, yeah.
Miss Manager, yeah. Well, I'm sorry that happened.
Yeah.
I will say I'm not an attorney, but I have done a lot of work on this. Always separate the two. So like even for the kids, we have who will care for them if something happened to my husband and I, and then a separate person that would manage the trust, just so that it's not like, because that happens a lot, unfortunately.
A lot. But hey, she lives on a golf course in Florida, so,
So far working out for her, except you guys are probably pissed about the whole situation.
We don't really talk to that side of the family very much anymore. So, whatever. But yeah, definitely a problem that happens within families. So always worth talking to your family about what could happen in the future, even if you don't want to talk about it. Because the fact that we had some of those conversations made it easier when my mom was in a car accident earlier this year and ended up in the hospital for several months. 2 broken vertebrae. Yeah, she's great. Okay. She had 2 broken vertebrae in her neck. They were, fractured. She had a broken, what's this word?
Sternum?
Yeah, sternum. She had a broken sternum and a couple of cracked ribs, and her left hip was broken in a couple of places. She was very, very lucky to be alive. But like those were some pretty scary conversations to have with my stepdad. You know, getting that phone call from my sister was not fun.
Hmm.
So it was definitely good that we had had those conversations ahead of time because it made it slightly easier to get the bad news
Yeah.
rather
Yeah.
than just completely out of the blue. Okay. So one final question, so we don't end on such a heavy, dark moment. If you pass the investment advice along to your husband to simple oh hold on a second. If you pass, is the investment advice for your husband to simplify the investment strategy to certain funds or hire a certain advisor? Or would you keep on with the strategy and expect them to implement your current strategy?
So our strategy is super simple as it is. So everything is in one place, and it is currently 2 funds, I think. So he would probably just keep it the same. I do list. So the way it's written out for us is that it's like, here's how you would keep it the same, and here's where to withdraw from first, and here's what the insurance money is actually supposed to be tagged for. I like put this much in the 529s, do whatever. However, I also list out advisors that I trust. And even there's a couple of blogger friends that I'm like, if you just need someone to talk to, like, reach out to these people. Because the fact that, like, I think that almost anyone is capable of managing their own investments, but that doesn't mean that they're like, that they want to, or that they have the emotional tools to. And like,
Yeah,
if anything did ever happen to me, he'd be dealing with a whole lot of other shit that like he might not want to handle this.
tons of shit.
So the information is there if he wanted it to just keep it where it was. And then I gave him some suggestions if he wanted to go another way.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think that is the perfect ending for our Facebook Live. So thank you, Chelsea, so much for coming on and
Thanks for
tell the wonderful people on how they can get to you just in case they've forgotten since the beginning of the show.
So I'm at mamafishsaves.com and mamafishsaves at every social platform. So it's easy to find me. And I'm in the group, so I will answer any questions. Is like if you guys want to leave more comments, I will pay attention to the thread for the next couple days.
Perfect. Will I see you at FinCon?
Of course.
All right. Well, I'll see you in a couple of weeks then.
See you in a couple weeks.
Thanks, Chelsea.
Bye.
So that was the awesome Chelsea, and I'm really glad that we had her on. So if you're interested in reading more about her and her views on life, I highly recommend checking out her site because she's really super smart and she's blushing because I'm giving her lots of compliments. But seriously, go check out her site because it is awesome. And thank you for checking out this Facebook Live. And I hope that I will see you next week. Have a wonderful night.